Good morning, everyone. This is Barney Cohen, and this is Double Your Sales with Barney Cohen. It's Saturday morning. It's 9 o'clock. I go live at 9 o'clock on Saturday mornings, and I'm going to start something new starting today. Every Saturday, I'm going to take some subject that I think is interesting to everyone who's been watching and elaborate on it. The material is mostly material that comes out of my course called the Business Tune-Up, and it's an accumulation of all the knowledge that I've gained over the years, and I've put it into a format that I think is good for you all, and I'm hopeful that you will gain something from it. I'm going to try and be relatively concise and just hopefully touch on subjects that are of deep interest to you. Good morning, Anna. So I am going to start here in a couple seconds. The presentations I make, I will save. I'll probably put them on YouTube or disseminate them in other places, and they also be saved on Facebook. They won't be saved on Instagram. So if you want these videos, you'll have to go to Double Your Sales with Barney Cohen. Go to Facebook, type Double Your Sales with Barney Cohen into the search bar, and you can join. At this point in time, the group is absolutely free. It costs nothing to join. When I get to 500 members, I'm going to make it a closed group, and then to join, you will have to pay some money. So if you're interested in getting in now and getting in for free, do it now before I hit 500 members. So I would love to have you in my group. And the group is for everybody who is interested in growing their business and serious about growing their business. Okie doke, I'm going to launch into this presentation for this morning. And then when I'm done with the presentation, if anybody in the Facebook group Double Your Sales wants to ask me a question, I will take questions at that point in time. I don't know how many of you are going to be listening live, and so it just depends on who's out there and what you want to say. But this presentation will probably take somewhere between 7 to 10 minutes. And at that point, if anything I've said, then if there's anything I've said then that interests you, then type it in, and we will I'll respond to it. So that's one of the advantages of being in the group, is I will talk to the people in the group. Okay, here we go. We're about 2 minutes in to the presentation, and I'm noting that because I want to find out where this is on the time dial, so I can go back in and splice out the parts that are just chit-chat and leave just the parts that are the presentation. This morning I'd like to talk about two things. Number one, what is marketing? And number two, where does marketing belong in your company? These are issues that are not very well understood by most business people. And I know this because every business person I meet either doesn't market well, or is confused by marketing and doesn't understand the importance of marketing in their business. And so what I'd like to do this morning is to cover these two subjects. What is marketing? Where does marketing fit into your business? So that you'll get a clear idea of where to start when you consider the subject of marketing. Marketing is poorly understood by almost everybody, and the reason should be obvious if you go to the internet and do a search for something like, would you define marketing, or what is marketing? And you'll see that there's just an incredible array of answers, and if you read them all and try and make sense of them all, you'll just walk away confused. I'm confused, and I think I know something about this subject, but the internet is just filled with so many points of view, and the points of view about marketing are many. And so I'm going to try to distill it down for you this morning to make some sense, to give you sort of a common sense look at what marketing is. So I'm going to start with my definition, and it's a longer definition, and we're going to try and shorten it before we're done. But the longer definition is, marketing is anything you do in your company that influences the perception of your company by those outside, those who are not in your company. So we're talking about basically two groups of people, two very large groups of people who are paying attention to you or might be paying attention to you that you would want to be talking to outside your company. And the first group is sort of obvious, but a lot of people don't acknowledge it. And that is, these are people you know and do business with. So the first group of people outside your company for whom marketing is important would be people that you do business with, your customers, your vendors, all the people that you know and touch on a daily basis or weekly basis or on a regular basis. Anything you do will influence their perception of you, and that is part of marketing. Then the other big group, and this is the group that's so important to people who are just starting out, are all those people you don't know. The people you don't know need to get an impression of your company, and these people, since you don't know them, you don't know where they are, and the very first thing they hear about you or see about you or the very first impression they make of you is when they come in contact with you for the very first time. So these are the two very large groups of people for whom we are concerned about marketing. So the marketing is whatever you do to influence their perception of you. Now you want to be making a positive impression. It would be nice if everyone you did business with thought well of you. And there's basically two ways you can do that with people that you already do business with. The first, and by far the most important, is you can do a really good job. So if you do a really good job for a customer, the customer will like it, they'll remember it, and hopefully they will come back and do more business with you, and hopefully they will tell other people about you. And that's a wonderful way to market, and it's the most obvious way to market for most companies. And it's something that's just not well understood by most current business people. They don't realize that every transaction with a customer or a vendor is a piece of marketing. And so the better impression you can make on your customers and vendors and your colleagues, the better your company is going to be, the more effective your marketing is going to be. In group number two, the way you can make a good impression, the second group are all these people you don't know, is that you can say something interesting. If you don't know somebody and you bump into them first time, either you bump into them or they bump into you, you would like it if that very first interaction was something that would create a favorable impression, and I call it raising of the eyebrows, where somebody's response would be, oh, well, that's interesting. So that's the big group that marketing is aimed at, and we want to make a good impression on them as well. Sometimes just smiling isn't enough. They don't know you, you don't know them, so you might have to do a little more than just smile or just do a good job, because they don't know you yet and they don't know even what a good job is. So you have to say something interesting, and hopefully these people will go, oh, okay, that's interesting. I will pay attention. The important thing to understand about marketing is you can't not market. You have to market because you live in the world, and everything you do is noticed by these two groups of people. The people who do business with you notice it because they have transactions with you every day. And the people that you don't know will make an impression of you when they bump into you for the first time. So you want to make a good impression, and if you want to make a good impression and you realize that you can't not market, then the obvious answer for me is, well, then you should market. You should put some energy into it. You should put some intention into it, and you should market purposefully so that people can get a good impression of you. I call doing no marketing is not really no marketing. It's equal to what I'd call bad marketing, because you're letting other people tell your story for you. And that leads me to what I think is a really good definition of marketing. A good definition of marketing that's short and is easy to remember is telling your story. It's something that you can do over and over again, and it's something that will resonate with the people that you are talking to. The purpose of telling your story is to increase your visibility, and that's what you want more than anything else in the world. You want more people to know you. You cannot grow your business unless you get more customers. and you can't get more customers unless more people know about you. So the purpose of marketing is to tell your story so that you raise your visibility. So the marketing is telling your story, and the purpose of it is to raise the visibility of your company. I'd like to use an example. Why do we call this thing marketing anyway? And it used to be before the age of the internet, marketing had to be done mostly in person. I mean, it was the only way you could market. The only way you could reach out and touch someone 100 years ago or 200 years ago would be to physically bump into them, or bump into somebody who bumped into somebody else. And a good example would be a farmer going to market, and that's why we call it marketing. If you're a farmer and you have a nice crop of, we'll say, fresh peaches, and you'd like to sell some of them, if you just sit at your farm and look at the fresh peaches, the only people who could possibly buy them would be people who came by your farm. And so the reason why a farmer would gather up all his peaches, he would harvest his ripe peaches, and he would drive to the town that was nearby, and he would set up a stall. And by setting up a stall in a marketplace, notice the word market, then people who don't drive by his farm could still buy peaches from him because they're coming to where he has his peaches. So setting up the stall, the process of making a store and setting it up and making it attractive, is a kind of marketing. Everyone who walks by may or may not know the farmer, but if they don't know the farmer, they walk by and they look at the peaches, and they either go, I'm interested in buying peaches, or I'm not. And so what the farmer is doing is he's dividing the whole world of everyone who comes through that town marketplace into two groups: people that love his peaches and are interested in buying them, people that don't love his peaches and have no interest in buying them. And that's the purpose of marketing, and you can see where the word comes from, because what we used to do is we used to go to market. I'd like to now turn to locating marketing on your company map. Is another thing that's not very well understood by most people. Where does marketing belong in the scheme of things in all the work that you do in your company? So the work in your company falls into two broad categories. The first is entrepreneurial, and the second is executive. Entrepreneurial work is everything you do to prepare for doing business. It's the setup work. It's the thinking, the planning, all that kind of stuff, and it includes things like, I wrote it down here so I wouldn't leave anything out: vision, strategy, planning, training, education, finding resources, developing products. In other words, it's all the work you do to get ready to do business. And before you start a business, then almost everything you do is entrepreneurial because you haven't started a business yet. Once you start a business, then the work shifts. You go into producing mode if you market or you sell or you take an order and produce it, or whatever else you do in your company. That is executive work. So all the work is either entrepreneurial or executive, and the entrepreneurial work is work you do before you get ready to do business. It's the setup work. The executive work is all the business of running your business, and the shift that takes place when you start a business is you go from everything being 100% entrepreneurial over to very quickly everything being almost 100% executive. Once you start your business, all of your effort is going to be on doing things, on getting orders and filling orders, and you won't be worried so much about the setup. And then the entrepreneurial work takes a back seat, and all of the work that gets done day in and day out is executive work. I believe that in most companies, executive work represents 95+% of all of the effort that's expended on behalf of that company. Executive work falls into three big categories, and then we divide it into smaller groups when we try to run the company. But the three big categories, I call them buckets. The three big buckets of executive work are getting orders, filling orders, and then everything else, which I call support. So the work of getting orders, which is the first thing I mentioned there, is called marketing and sales. And you have to do both those things to get an order, and I'll dig into that a little bit in later presentations. But for now, it's everything you need to do to get an order. Filling orders is usually called production, and in companies that have inventory, there's another area of work in production that's called purchasing, and for companies that do manufacturing, there's another area of work that's called supply or logistics, or assembling all the ingredients to make whatever it is you're going to make. But those are the production functions. And then everything else is, in the beginning of a small business, everything else is just everything else. But as your company grows, that morphs into accounting and HR, human resources, IT, information services or information technology, facilities, administration, etc. So these are the three big areas of executive work in your company: getting the orders, filling the orders, and the support for those things. There's an order to this, and the order is really, really important, and that's the final point I want to make here today. The support people have nothing to do unless someone's produced an order. And the production company has nothing to do unless somebody has given them an order, unless someone's taken an order. And a salesman can't take an order unless he has a lead. And that brings us right back to marketing. The job of marketing in most businesses, particularly small and medium-sized businesses, is to produce leads. And we use the tools of increasing our visibility to produce leads. And that puts marketing squarely on the bullseye. Your company won't move forward unless you are good at marketing, because that's where it all starts. I will be with you again tomorrow on Sunday at 9 a.m. in the morning Pacific time, and I will present this week's big idea and take any responses. So if any of you that are live would like to ask me a question, I'd be glad to take it now.